they decided on a very bold move. This time, a blade that Captain Watson calls the can opener is attached to his boat, the Farley Moet. It is precisely these dramatic measures that make Sea Shepherd very unpopular in some circles, but heroes in others. Yet again, not the success they were hoping for this time.
We were trying to ram their ship so that we gouged it. We only managed to scratch it, and because the way we hit it, the can opener actually bent.
And run like the coward you are.
Because they're quite prepared to risk injury and damage to property, putting themselves and others at risk, they have been branded as eco-terrorists in some circles.
We're not eco-terrorists, we're eco-warriors.
I don't really care too much about what people think about us. Where we intervene against illegal activities, and I don't see anything wrong with that. We've never injured anybody, and people say, well, we damage property, and we certainly do, but that's property which is being used for illegal activities. So I don't see any difference between illegal whaling, poaching of fish, and or smuggling ivory, robbing banks, or trafficking in drugs. It's all the same thing to me.
For Paul and crew, it has been an exhausting few months at sea, and out of fuel, they limped back to Cape Town at the end of January. But they did not quite receive a hero's welcome. Instead, their detention by the port authorities soon dominated headlines. Meanwhile, Greenpeace managed to continue to harass the Japanese whalers for another week. Ironically, their ship, the Arctic Sunrise, was actually rammed by one of the Japanese whalers and will have to be repaired once in Cape Town.
I think it's more than a coincidence that only 2 weeks after our confrontation with the Japanese, we come into Cape Town and here the bureaucrats are waiting for us to give us a hard time.
Paul is convinced that there's collusion between governments that ultimately leads to the continued slaughter of whales. He maintains it was the Japanese that persuaded South African government officials to detain the ship and stop it returning to the Southern Oceans. Our port authorities claim the Farley Moet needs to be registered as a commercial vessel, when actually, under Canadian law, it's registered as a private yacht. Only a few countries in the world traditionally use whale meat. Yet a surprising number of countries have turned pro-whaling, despite an overwhelming sentiment internationally that whaling should not be allowed. IWC members have claimed that votes are being bought. According to them, the Fisheries Agency of Japan is operating what he calls a vote consolidation program, which promises aid to developing countries in return for a pro-whaling stance at the IWC meetings. Some whale species were once nearly driven to extinction by indiscriminate whaling, even by countries such as South Africa. Some have recovered now to a point where sustainable harvesting may be plausible if there was any effective quota policing, which up till now has been non-existent. Conservationists are quick to point out that the cornerstone of conservation worldwide is sustainable utilization, and that it has now become a moral and ethical decision not to utilize the meat of marine mammals, but rather to exploit the tourism potential. Whale watching worldwide is fortunately also a vast and lucrative industry. Some locals came to the rescue of the stricken Farley Moet. Food donations and offers of help started streaming in after the media published their story.
Well, I think the people here in South Africa are very supportive. We certainly have seen, been welcome.
We decided that we'd come to the party and help these guys on the ship, who are the true samurais of the whale preservation. They're actually out there doing it and living under extreme harsh conditions. The least we can do is help out.
Willie, Vessel's dad, is also very glad to see his son safely home, but doesn't seem too perturbed by his decision to join such a daredevil crew.
When it became a reality and he started packing, we had a few nervous moments, especially when we started reading up more about Sea Shepherd and the kinds of things they did.
Sea Shepherd and Greenpeace are not alone in their struggle against the whalers. A new group, Whale Mark, is also putting pressure on the South African government and whaling nations. They organized a demonstration recently outside the Japanese embassy in Cape Town.
The synergy in terms of Sea Shepherd, Greenpeace, Whale Mark itself, we have to unite as well, and you have to unite in terms of all animal welfare groups throughout the world.
The anti-whaling groups have been identifying companies and organizations that have links to whalers and their affiliates. Their list include major corporations and well-known brands. What they propose is a world boycott of all products that originate from pro-whaling countries, or companies that can be linked in any way to whaling. But Japan's claim of scientific research can also be disproved, according to Whalemark.
The Japanese government is utilizing parts of the whale oil and wax for cosmetics, lipstick, and pharmaceuticals. Now, this is a fact. A pharmacist at this stage is collecting all the data to analyze the products, and if this comes to light, I really think Japan is in big, big trouble.
We have a huge obligation in this country to really, especially bringing it home to children and people, youngsters in schools, what the point about an ecosystem is, what the point of an animal like a whale in a wider ecosystem represents. And we haven't gone very far as far as that is concerned in South Africa.
Greenpeace intend heading up the west coast of Africa, but the Sea Shepherd crew, for the time being, have to stay put, killing time with maintenance work in preparation for their next dramatic adventure, rumoured to be up the east coast, hunting down illegal fishing operations off Mozambique.
I think a lot of people tend to take it to heart and, wonder why we can't do more. And I think we're a small part of a major change in the world. And I think that we're definitely not going to be able to do it on our own. But maybe people out there will see footage of what happened, or maybe people out there will realize that a world without whales is really not a world that they want to live in.
It certainly requires great commitment to risk life and limb in this way. So, hats off to all those brave people who've stood up to be counted. But it's a sad reflection on the international community who's doing very little to police the fishing industry. Perhaps an